So that is why I think other groups are coming to Earth. It's not because they want to be friendly, it's because they want something. And I think it's genetics.
Holy mackerel, that can't be aircraft. There actually is a large unidentified object circling the Earth at incredible speed.
Actually, we are very curious to know where it is you come from.
So one shape that's shown up in ufology or the UAP world since UFOs have been a thing is the sphere. There's saucers, there's triangles, and there's spheres. And the sphere phenomenon really started to show up in earnest in World War II. Allied fighting planes, U.S. troops, even the Nazis all reported these metallic spheres either tailing their plane or doing impossible maneuvers. And the interesting part was the Nazis thought it was us, and we thought it was the Nazis. And you could call them even orbs, because some of them had glowing properties at night. But that really ushered in the era of the sphere. And you fast forward all through the decades, there's pictures of craft and these metallic spheres associated with them being around them. You get to the 70s, and just up the road from us here in Florida, you had the Betts family. And the Betts family claimed that they found a sphere on their property. And while they had possession of it, this sphere is supposedly rolling across the table and stopping before it falls off the table. It's rolling across the floor and really has what's implied under some kind of control or has control itself. Military gets involved. Apparently they had tested this and brought back one that didn't work, if I have it right. So who knows if there was a swap there. That's kind of the legend. And then it just disappeared forever. Fast forward to 2019, the USS Omaha aircraft carrier has infrared footage from the carrier of a sphere lowering down towards the ocean and finally splashing in.
ASAP.
Splashing at Bering Ring.
Sure. Got 2 winds, 30 knots.
Keep going, bro. Let's go down.
We're making 10, so we could probably bring that 35 relative.
Windy as fuck up that.
Sir.
Yeah, I'll bring it down.
We got a lot of white water up there, so 6-foot swells.
Whoa, it's getting close.
Yeah, we have 31 knots sustained wind, topside, gust of 40.
What was splashed? Mark Bering Range.
And there's commentary around it, implying the transmedium ability of spheres in this case. Up to now, even the last couple months, you had the Buca sphere in Colombia with this wild video of a sphere landing in a field, them collecting the sphere, having it in possession. It's dubious at best. The people that have been in charge of, took control of the sphere have a history of hoaxing, and it's got inscriptions and seams. It doesn't really look like the spheres that we come to know. So having said all that, spheres are as big a part of ufology as any craft or object. And today, we're going to dig into a theory that might just reframe the whole inference of what spheres are and what spheres aren't. And we have Patrick Jackson joining us from across the pond. Good to see you, Patrick. And we'll kind of walk through with him his theory that some seem radical, and it's definitely thought-provoking. So, Patrick, without further ado, it's good to have you here. And let's start. There's a part of your book. He wrote a book also called The Sphere Network. And in that book, in kind of dead center, is the architectural foundation of your theory. And I thought that may be a good place to start. So you kind of at a high level walk us through that.
Yeah, sure. So in a nutshell, there's 3 different main variants of these spheres. You have the small baseball size, what I call Type 3s. They operate generally low to the ground. They are they mostly operate in buildings as well. They are the root cause of poltergeist activity. The Type 3s basically create a dynamic network, a microwave-based dynamic network, which is line of sight. So it creates imagine a bunch of cell towers on the ground, but in this case, it operates inside buildings. And then you have the Type 2, which is a larger variant. This is the one what the US government is talking about. It's basically about the size of a bowling ball, maybe a bit bigger. And that's seen flying above treetops, over buildings and so forth. And then you have the Type 1V formation, which is a big triangle in the sky. They're the largest of the variants. Those ones are much bigger. They're about the size of beach balls, that kind of size. And they form these big triangles up in the sky. And what they do is they're performing a process called trilateration, which is by the very formation that they're in, you can mathematically reverse engineer what they are doing, which is a process called trilateration.
Wow. So for the non-technical viewers at home, that was a bit. But Patrick, by trade, you're a technologist. So I guess that line of thinking isn't foreign to you. But when you talk about a network, I read about a network. Describe how these things form a network and what's the purpose of this network.
So the key to it all is the Type 3s. Growing up, I had a fascination with paranormal and haunted buildings and poltergeists and stuff like that. And in the end, I wanted to try and figure it out. So I basically rented out a place called 30 East Drive, which is the most aggressive poltergeist in the UK, and some would argue in Europe, and some would even say the world. It's just a small little house, and people can go in there today. They can just rent it out and go and check it out. And so I stayed in there, and I started noticing patterns and processes that other people just didn't. For instance, there's a process or an event that occurs there, which is like a door banging event. Basically, the coal shed door will bang 8 or 9 times, and you go downstairs and there's nothing there. Then once that event happens, nothing will happen for like 3 or 4 days. So I kind of noticed this pattern because this is what you call a constant. This is like a constant action that keeps reoccurring. And what I noticed was that when it comes to these patterns, is that it isn't human behavior pattern. It's actually a lot more like machine patterns. It's more process driven. So I noticed that, and then I started noticing lots of weird electronic effects around the buildings as well. Lots of things were happening. Batteries were going strangely dead. Walkie-talkies were triggering and acting strange. But then on I think it was like the third night, I got like a brain swelling. My brain started swelling in my head.
Whoa.
And which was really bad. And I couldn't concentrate or think or anything like that. And what it took me like 6 months to really get my head together after the events and to try and work out what was going on. And that's what I did. I used to stay back after work for about 2-3 hours every night and basically look at video and try and figure out what was going on, because none of it made any sense to me at all. What the mainstream was saying doesn't make any sense. What all these ghost hunters and stuff, it makes no sense. The fact is, in the UK alone, 1,800 people die every day, but there's no increase in paranormal activity. The same buildings that were haunted 5 years ago are the same today. There hasn't been a sudden increase. There's not a new spike of new buildings getting paranormal activity. It just generally stays the same low level amount. So all this was kind of confusing me, and then after like after about 6 months, I finally got hold of an image And in the image, I noticed something. It looked like a small silver sphere. So I boosted up the image a little bit and had a close look at it. And what came out was, as I said, a small silver ball. And I realized I'd seen that before because growing up in my village, I used to see these, what I used to call pearls of light. And they were literally like some small balls of light going over the treetops, over the roads. And I never sort of registered what they were. I just sort of see them a lot. But it was the same thing. And then now I'm a bit wiser. I realized that they were small silver spheres, which is effectively a drone. And that's what I realized was the root cause of this effects and the actions that you're seeing in these buildings, because the actions and the effects were machine-like, computer-like. If something happened right now, there's nothing you can do to make something happen again. You know, it doesn't matter how much you shout or scream, it doesn't happen. It will happen when it wants to happen and then shut down again. And that's what I noticed. Yeah, and at the same time, you have people who are suffering like headaches, migraines. They feel faint, they feel sick, feel nauseous. They can't breathe very well. Things like that, and they all blame it on or associate it to spirits and evil spirits and so forth. But it's not. When I realized that this thing was a drone, it was like, okay, well that makes sense, because what does a drone need? And you know, you've been an IT guy, you probably figured this one out.
Humor me.
Okay. So
it needs a power source. It needs some way to operate. You know, a power source that's the internal.
Yep. And what else?
No, I'm going to let you finish it.
Okay. Well, it needs. Yeah, you're right. It needs a power source, a very long-term power source. You need a network because it's a drone, and number two, it needs to send and receive signals.
Yep.
Which is constant with our current drone technology today. So all you're really looking at is a more advanced drone. And then you're thinking, okay, well, if it's got AI as well, which is what our drones also have, or just a more sophisticated version of it, then then this is start to explain stuff. Because what you have is a small drone that is effectively a transponder. So it will fly around the house and you're not even aware it's there. And then when it needs to uplink, it will power up. It will start, maybe even start glowing. It will start producing signals, send and receive signals. It will then, which appears to be gamma radiation and microwaves, which then means it performs actions to move you away, which is in line with the inverse square law of radiation. Because when these things are broadcasting, you're talking about high energy emissions. So what it's doing is clearing the space to get people out of the way, and it does that via scarecrow actions, which is what we call poltergeist activity.
Wow, it's a lot. It's a lot, and I am familiar with 30 East because, as you know, I made some films that we were a group of guys kind of going down the paranormal avenue, and 30 East is a very haunted location in the UK, and I have seen some of your imagery of that you've captured. Then I didn't realize you had the brain swelling, and when you say that, that kind of reminds me of the guy in Skinwalker Ranch when the first season started. They had to rush him to the emergency room because of brain swelling. And of course, they report the same thing there, these spheres and objects. What do you think the purpose is? If there's a network of spheres and different types of spheres, and they're operating with almost within a network, and is there any rhyme or reason that you've seen in your research? And I know it's hard because it's not like field research where you can do repeatable experiments. But in your research, is there any motivation you've seen? Maybe we're talking a little more about the implication of a sphere network. And are there any areas that this is more common in?
Yeah. So, you can actually see you can work out what they're doing quite easily through mathematics. So as I said, the Type 1V formation, they always produce this big triangle in the sky, and then off that you have a Type 2, which is always at the back. So you can imagine this is the triangle, and this is the Type 2. This will move around like this and turn around like this, like on a plane, but this will always stay generally behind it, like in this kind of thing. And if you look at it through mass, again, it's performing a thing called trilateration, which is the process of tracking objects in 3D space. So what happens is that the triangle at the front is doing a two-dimensional tracking in the sky. So it's using 3 points to locate a target in the sky. And then the one at the back is doing a distance calculation. And when you combine all that data together, you get 3D tracking in space. So you can say this object is exactly here at 100 miles there. So what you're looking at is a very high resolution targeting system.
Okay, so what do you think they're targeting?
Any space-based threats.
Space threat?
So anything from space-based threats. So anything from meteors to other UAPs.
Gotcha. And do you think this is? It sounds like a defense network, basically. And what's interesting is, do you have any idea or implication as to, or I guess I should ask, do you believe when you talk or hear about some of the people that were on ATIP and OSAP that were physicists there have come out in front of Congress or congressional representatives anyway, and started talking about different species, the Nordics, the reptilians, the grays, as if we were talking about different types of dog breeds, just very matter of fact. Is there any indication to you, is this associated with any particular species, or is there any way to know?
All I can say is that the system itself is ground-based. So all the architecture, all the processing, the servers that run it, because it has to be all over the world, it is based under the ground or inside mountains hidden in plain sight. Who runs it? I don't know. However, it is a current system that is currently being updated always. It's up to date, it's adaptive, which means whoever built it is still controlling it, manning it, upgrading it, and so forth. So the idea of this is like being an ancient system that has been left here is not true. It's actually it's still very much active and up and running. And from what I hear, from what I can tell, new spheres are still being deployed. They're still being found, and so forth.
So that brings up a good point. So would you lean towards this being more man-made?
No.
No?
So the technology that these things are demonstrating would require such a layer of different technologies into one product. We can't even replicate one of those layers, let alone to build a product out of it. So if you think about it, you're talking about power source, you're talking about networking, you're talking weapon systems, you're talking tracking, miniaturized nanotechnology, because these things are small compared to like jet fighters. And yet these spheres can outperform our fastest and best fighter jets. So, and also they have an indefinite loitering time as well. These things have been seen over airports for days. They fly off and they come back again. And there was a case actually where I think it was Heathrow and Gatwick Airport at the same time, I think it was, were swarmed by these what they call drones, but they weren't drones; they were these spheres, and they would hang around for hours. And the SAS went in, the special forces went in to try and find whoever was flying these things. They couldn't find anyone. So, instead they ended up blaming some random guy who had nothing to do with it. But it just grabbed the headlines at the time. But when you actually look into the case, it wasn't him. So, yeah, as I said, the power source, the networking, the AI, the materials, all this stuff we can't replicate it. And this isn't a new thing. There are images going back to the 70s and 40s of these objects way before we even had decent microprocessors. So the idea that this could be some sort of reverse engineered US system, it just doesn't add up.
Yep. Interesting. And I know that there was some talk of, I think his Lockheed Martin, the Tic Tac from the, there's indicating that this is a third generation technology. So you don't buy into that at all?
No. The reason I say that is because the Tic Tac and the spheres fly together. They all fly as a unit. And the Tic Tac has been seen since the Vietnam days.
Yeah.
So, but again, before we had any sort of high-tech propulsion or processing ability. So that's not the case, no.
Well, with paranormal then, do you think, let me ask you this, if the spheres are kind of creating a diversion, or would you describe it as a diversion? If I'm in a house like 30 East in the UK that's crazy haunted, quote unquote, what would be the purpose of a location like that having these spheres operate over it and maybe not deceiving people but distracting people? What would be your theory on why?
So like any network, it goes where it needs to go. It's not really an option. It just goes where it needs to go, like our own cellular network. Some people have cell towers outside their bedroom windows. You know, they're literally that close. But no, it's like any network. It goes where it needs to go. And I think the Type 3s, what they do is they generally route through unpopulated areas, and they will broadcast or relay from any location that will hide the electronic emissions. So anything from, say, a tunnel to a cave to a hole in the floor and in the ground, anything that will help shield the emissions. But when it routes through urban zones or public zones, they will use buildings to relay from. So when they're relaying relaying signals, as I said, and this has been detected and tracked, and we've recorded it and we've analyzed it, and it's there. It's an 18-bit code. And the thing is that when they're relaying, they're producing high energy emissions, which, as a result, if people are up close, they will be affected by it. This is why people faint and feel sick in these buildings, because it's basically a gamma radiation pulse.
Have you, at 30 East, did you check for gamma rays, and were there elevated levels at times?
Yeah. And also this picking up 1.6 gigahertz as well, which is the same as what they're picking up Skinwalker.
It's exactly the same.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of what you described is what I do watch the show, so it's exactly what they've experienced there. And even you said something earlier about that this, where it emanates from would be something underground or in a mountain. And they've got the mesa that they're trying to dig into with this large object that creates a frequency. And what I've noticed on the show is sometimes they'll put out like a 1.2 gigahertz frequency, and then all of a sudden they start getting that same frequency. They describe it as being mimicked back to them. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's not really being mimicked. What it is it's a response.
Okay.
So you're sending out a signal, and then what's happening? What they really need to do at Skinwalker is don't dig into the ground, because if there is underground infrastructure there, let's say 500 feet underground, then whoever runs it is going to get rather annoyed with whoever's doing it, and people who do that generally end up having heart attacks or heart issues or things like that, which has replicated on the ranch. What you need to do is do it via signal intelligence. So what you have your AI with a transmitter talking to their AI. So you start bouncing back signals left and right, and then from there they start working stuff out. So if you had like your own AI system at Skinwalker, and a transmitter, say a microwave transmitter that was broadcasting 1.01 or something, then you get a response, then the AI would analyze the response and then come up with a counter response. And then over time, that will start opening up.
Interesting. I talked about your theory, in general, and maybe some of the, I guess, some of the tangible or measurable or what you've ran across as far as seeing it in action with this house in particular. Have you ever seen, I know a lot of people around the world are claiming they have possession of these metallic spheres. Have you ever handled one or seen one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen quite a few, yeah.
What, how much can you share about that?
Not much. I'm not really at liberty to say too much, but that they are there. They've been tested, you know. So it's just waiting for the right opportunity, really.
Okay, a little cryptic. So it sounds like you may have. And I know, just so people know, I've known Patrick for a number of years, and we had a common friend who I was doing some film work with, and Patrick actually develops equipment as well. You know, that we used. In fact, we used at on a Native American reservation in the smack dab in the middle of the country that had a lot of the phenomena that we're talking about, as well as other stuff going on, right? So we actually, we posted up, or they insisted that we come to a couple houses that would be the equivalent of like a 30 East in the UK that's haunted. They don't really describe it like that. On these homelands, it's all, they even have like Bigfoot lights and what they call spirits, and they all seem to be intertwined. And so they took us to a couple of these buildings that were right out of Casting Central. They looked like slasher film movie sets. They were a little terrifying, right? So we get there at 2 a.m, and they were very adamant about, shut your cameras off now. We'll give you the backstory of what happened here. And typically it was some kind of it wasn't good. There were some atrocities at these places. So they felt that was what was going on. What we did find was when we ran your, I can't think of the name of the device we used at the time. I think
it was one of the, one of my old dog whistles, basically.
Yeah. And what was, so just to kind of give the people the general outline of what it was designed to do. What was it designed to do?
So I figured out how to track these the spheres in buildings, and so we put that into a physical unit to filter out background noise and basically just trigger on those signatures. And then when it triggered on when it got those signatures, it then broadcast some technical from binary code, and that's what that sound is in the video. From that point, that's when the sphere should start engaging a bit more. And they seem to work. So
yeah, because I can tell you when we had it set up, there was a table we had it set up on. If I'm remembering correctly, there was a upstairs, like stairs leading up, and most of the windows were blown out. And when it started to go off, it was me and Ryan, and we both, whenever we got near the stairs, there was a very a feeling of almost lightheadedness, a feeling of almost foreboding. It wasn't a good energy coming from the stairs, or what was up those stairs. And then the device starts to go off. And so what is it, when it goes off, what does that indicate?
it means that the stairs are nearby.
Okay.
That's what it means, yeah.
Because what was interesting was we separated, I think it was the first night we separated, and Ryan went with the group and I went with another group, and they experienced these lights that were all throughout. It was nighttime, and it was all throughout the timber in front of them, but they went back the next day because they thought maybe there was these really distant house lights or something, but there was actually a hill that would block any long-range vision, and these lights would pop up in 2s and 3s and different colors. And one of the or both cameramen were pretty much skeptics, and the one that went there, he was freaked out. He was like, I saw it change these colors. So the bottom line is we had a lot of lights, I guess I would say, associated with it. And we did use your device. And I got to be honest, it was a little terror. I didn't think anything was going to happen at these locations, but it was a little unsettling. And, you know, I know you'd mentioned your theory then, and I know you wrote your book, The Sphere Network, which we'll provide a link on this so people can go check it out. But that's just talk, right? We're talking. You've got a book. That's cool. We kind of have some common friends. We're testing your equipment. But then, you know, with some of the who's in this field, right, are starting to mention your name here the last year. I was watching a clip with Ross Coulthart and Gary Nolan, the Stanford pathologist, who's also a professor and has kind of taken the torch on the scientific side and said, send me, you know, anything you want me to test. And he's being used in many ways to try to help scientifically vet the UAP phenomenon. And Gary brings up to Ross, he says an English gentleman, and he's referring to you. He also comments on the fact that as far back as, you know, decades and decades ago, when there are images of craft, these spheres associated with it. For him, what was compelling was, how could you have that hoax perpetuate to where you always have an image and then these spheres in the formations you described along with it? So that was compelling to him. And I also know that I think as of yesterday, there was an announcement that you made me aware of on Twitter or X with another scientist that wants to collaborate with you. Can you? And I don't know much about her. Maybe you can fill me in on that.
So she and her team, they discovered orbital objects during the period where we had no satellite footprint at all, before we launched anything into space. And that is, and it looks like a reflective. These objects are appearing and disappearing, and then they're making formations and so forth. And I've spoken to her privately, and she's followed me for a while. And I think, from what I can tell from our conversations, it appears to be what I've been talking about for 5-6 years, which is a sphere network.
So when you say she's found these same formations, are you talking about in deep space, or where has she discovered these?
It's in our atmosphere,
upper atmosphere.
80,000 feet.
80,000 feet. And how did she discover that?
I think she's looking at some old plates, old telescopic plate. What they used to use in the old days was like a plate, and they used to take a picture on it. I think that's how they used to do it. But she found that on the old plates, so it was taken during. Again, it's like historic imagery, which then they put through a digitizer of some sort, and then looked at the different plates, and then started finding patterns. What she noticed was these objects that are appearing and disappearing, and appear to be in formations, appear to be metallic, appear to be in a process of some sort, and it's basically what we're looking at is engineering. It's deliberate engineering. It's not just the odd light in the sky. It's a deliberate engineering process of something at 80,000 feet, which, combined with my work, it does appear to be, as I said, it appears to be the sphere network.
Wow. There's a lot. I mean, gosh, since the last, I think, 4 years since we first were introduced, there's so much that has gone on in the world of, I guess, the layer of government, either disclosure or PSYOP or in consciousness. That's another thing I wanted to touch on. So what do you think about the talk of people luring craft in through psionics?
Well, it's no surprise. So from what I can tell from the how it models out is humans are kind of like we're kind of like, because we live on the surface, right? So we are, how it models out in the sphere network is you have ultra-terrestrials that live here but live underground, deep underground, or inside mountains and so forth. You then have us that live on the surface of the Earth, and then you have the sphere network up in the sky. So what we appear to be, or at least what we are maybe created for, is that when people see UFOs, something in us alerts the spheres to come have a look. And that's what it appears to be. I mean, I can't prove that, but that's what it appears to be. And this actually goes back to like biblical references as well. There's pictures in the Bible where of children pointing up, and then if you look in the background, you see three spheres and a triangle and so forth, and a UFO over here. But it appears that we are somehow interfaced with them one way or the other. And also during my testing at 30 Years Drive, I found that I was setting up a test, and I put like a camera on a GoPro sticky thing, like a mount, and put it on a picture. And I remember going outside, and then in my head I saw like a big, like looking like I was looking at it, and then it flew off literally a second later. I could hear it literally gets thrown down the stairs. And this was a professional GoPro mount that you could hold like 3 or 4 bags of sugar off this thing, and yet it just popped off like a cork. But I saw that in my head before it happened. So it almost appears like they can send you like almost like what's the word, visions, just for like a moment, and then it goes away. So whatever it is, they appear to have the ability to give us visions, or video and audio visions, or so forth. Which actually it goes back to the Bible. There's a lot of that going on in the Bible, where people have visions and they create new religions off the back of that.
Well, it is interesting, and I do know a lot of the works you're referencing as far as the art that depicts these things, and I also know that like Jacques Vallée talks a lot about our reference point, almost with. It's almost like in the Bible, or people's references to what I'll just say it, hell looks like, is based off of medieval imagery, and they take the medieval imagery, and that somehow has stuck. And with spheres or non-human intelligence, a lot of the references that people had in ancient times was something that was maybe folklore at the time, or whether it's elves, fairies, demons. There's a lot of categories during a period of time that they would put those into, but his reference point is maybe they've always been here. It's just our social attachment to them is whatever is the referenceable point at the time. So I'm interested in. It's kind of heating up for you, and I know that from some of our conversations, as far as maybe some things coming down the road that are exciting. And I know that you can't really talk about them openly, but can you give any implication of maybe some of the future work you're looking to get into?
Well, I like to get into the business side of it more. So it'll be something like Skywatcher is doing,
right?
But maybe in a different kind of way. So that's kind of what I'm aiming to do in my own time. But publicly, I also want to do a lot of documentaries as well, because it'll be good to show people from scratch how this is operating. So that means you go to like a haunted building or so forth, and then you can map it out with sensors. And then you can get the data from there. And what you would do is you would put sensors around the building and leave it for 6 months. So you get all the data you need first, and then you make the production. But that's what I would do. The problem with the current productions is that because they've only got one night to film, really, they don't really get any data. They just get like the odd bang and crash, and then run around the building for a while. But what people really want is data, and that's these days with AI and how easy it is to analyze complex data, it can easily be done.
What do you think? You'd mentioned documentaries, and you mentioned trying to leave sensors for long periods of time. What do you feel about the work they are doing at Skinwalker Ranch? Because I know it's a TV show, so I get a lot of people saying, "Look, it's all scripted and staged," but yet you've got companies showing up there that have equipment that cost more than all of our net worth combined for one night or a week to use, and the reputation at stake, because these businesses or these technology companies have a full business. Skinwalker Ranch is just something they're doing or brought in to do. So the they don't want to ruin the reputation in my mind. And so when you see the results they're getting from the technical, their technical analysis, how much credence do you give to that, and what do you think about the type of testing that they're doing there? Would you do it differently, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, firstly, I mean, in the beginning, I wasn't quite sure about, the Skinwalker or Brandon himself. I wasn't sure what they were really doing. But I have spoken to him, and he is a genuine guy. He really does want to figure stuff out. And he spends an incredible amount of money on Skinwalker Ranch, and not just Skinwalker Ranch, but other projects as well that people aren't even aware of. So he really, his heart really is into trying to find out what's going on. Regarding the Skinwalker itself, I think some of the tests are done more for the camera than they are for actual science. Bigger drones, bigger explosions. It all looks great on the camera, but I don't think it helps really finding out what's going on there. I would do it differently. Yeah, I wouldn't be digging big holes in the mesa, for example, because when people do that, they get physically injured, like they have heart attacks, or they have some sort of weird growth starts growing in their head. And what these are basically these other guys saying, "Stop doing that, go away." It's just like a warning shot. So it's not a good idea to dig down. How it models out is if they do have underground infrastructure, then they would be using the rock itself to mask the electronic emissions and signatures. So if you start digging into that or trying to expose it, they will get upset with you, and they will do things that will not be helpful. The way I would do it would be a lot less spectacular. It will just be through signal intelligence, and that's how I would do it. Where you have an AI system running, say, a Skinwalker, which is sandboxed, so it's not talking to the outside world. It's just talking to the mesa and back. And then you have that AI trying to engage with whatever is there through signals, and just see how far it gets, see what it finds. And that's what I would do. And it's also probably the safest way to do it as well. The thing is that, the Skinwalker is a dangerous place. I know people think it's all fun and games and entertainment, but it is a dangerous place. And it's not something you want to play with unless you're really sure of what you're doing. But there's other places like Skinwalker as well. I think there's one called Stardust Ranch, which is the same thing. Same events, same kind of phenomena, same spheres everywhere. How the sphere network models out is that you have like network hubs, and in like in our own internet, you have like processing hubs, like network hubs, like big server room. We call them data centers, but kind of like that. and they'll be in one location, and then another location, and so forth. And I think at Skinwalker there is one of these, and also at Stardust Ranch there is one of these as well. And there's probably them. They're probably put through the whole middle of the country as well, and also here in the UK and around the world.
It's interesting you bring that up, because in my career as doing the tech recruiting thing, data centers are at the heart of. I help staff, whether they're designing data centers or the critical facilities techs or whatnot. So I get the concept of it. Having said that, what do you think about when you talk about a place like Skinwalker, or when you talk about a place that's haunted like 30 East? I'm trying to pull parallels here, but when people see things, we haven't really touched on that. Like when you see a dire wolf at Skinwalker Ranch that they shoot and doesn't die and it trots off, or when they see these something crawling through a portal, like John Alexander and Bigelow reported that their guys saw a portal open and a large black being crawl through the portal. Stuff like that, the cryptids and the manifestation of what people would either call spirits or ghosts, whatever you say that are. Do you think these things are responsible for creating that imagery, or?
It's a little bit of both. So in these buildings, say 30 East Drive, people see a black mass moving around. It's like a long vertical black mass which moves around digitally, and that's basically the Type 3 sphere that's using it's like an optical effect to hide itself. And they're very, very common. Those things are seen all over the place. Regarding the actual, like when they see beings or animals and so forth, well, if you have a species that lives underground, then now and again they're going to be on top of the ground, walking around. It's just, they probably just do it in remote areas and not near urban areas. So it doesn't really surprise me that people are seeing weird looking guys walking around remote areas.
What do you think about, and we haven't touched on this, and I did want to touch a little bit. I was thinking about it. We've talked about like the paranormal and the effects that happen in places like Skinwalker Ranch with physical difficulties, sensory sensors that just don't operate right, or they shut down drones, or they frequencies popping up and shutting down machinery. What do you think about the abduction phenomenon? How does that tie into this, or does it?
Well, I think there's two types of abduction. So there's one type where people report getting taken from their beds and their homes, and then they wake up in their beds and their homes. But then I think there's another type where people are taken and not returned. So I think there appears to be two different groups doing it. One may be the ultra-terrestrials doing it, and one may be an external group doing it, because the behavior pattern is different. So it appears to be one is sort of maybe doing genetic work, I suppose, and the other one is just taking.
So give me your definition when you say ultra-terrestrials. Kind of vet that out for me. How would you describe that?
They live here, just like us. In the same way that we stay out of the way of primates, and we live in our own domain outside primates. And equally, we couldn't take a primate and bring him into our world because he just wouldn't understand it. The ultra-terrestrials treat us the same way. So they're on a different level, probably intellectually, probably an IQ around 300 to 400. We probably have very little in common with them. And so they live in their domain and stay out of our way.
Are you familiar with John Keel, that name?
I've heard the name, but I'm not really familiar with his work.
Yeah, John Keel was an author in, I believe, New York, and back when the whole West Virginia Mothman flap and phenomena was happening, John Keel was convinced that after researching this stuff himself, experiencing some of the phenomena himself, and it ranged from everything from a giant moth-like creature or owl-like human hybrid terrorizing people to craft to people. He would get phone calls that were from these what he would call ultra-terrestrials. I think he may have coined the term ultra-terrestrials, and he kind of described it like you did, that they're not us, but they're have a keen interest in us. And let me ask you this to that end, because it just got me thinking. With a lot of the abductees, with a lot of the, I guess, similarities in your theory that it's a defense mechanism, a lot of people talk about them trying to keep us from, like, almost like kids that have discovered the matches, right? Like how to keep us from burning it all down. Do you think that's a part of the motivation for whoever, if it's ultra-terrestrials and they have a sphere network and they've been here a long time, do you think that's their motivation? I'll kind of end with that. What do you think the motivation is for these ultra-terrestrials to have a sphere network?
Okay, so you have a group that lives underground, have probably been here for a long, long time. We come along, and also there's a sphere network on top. Now, what it appears to be is there's external groups that want to come here for whatever reason, maybe for resources, either that of genetic or material, most likely genetic, because materials are actually fairly commonplace in the universe. So it's like, well, if we have something they want, they will come and get it. And then you have the sphere network, which is stopping it. So the question is what's the purpose of humanity? What's the point of it? Why are we here, kind of thing. Well, if you think about it, like, humanity is supposed to be a hybrid between a primate and something else, or they call it the missing link. But the thing is that what's the point of crossbreeding a primate? What's the point of using a primate? Well, it's because primates are very strong, very tall, very fast, very survivable. So if you have a second species that lives here that is smaller, weaker than us, but just smarter, then if they want someone to guard the surface of the earth, then they build a bigger versions of themselves, which is what we are. And the truth is that the main skill set of humanity is killing, because everyone on this earth, every single human is capable of extreme violence, and that's what we are good at. If you look at us from afar, that's our primary skill set. So if you think about it, if how it models out, if something gets through the sphere network and crashes on the ground, then they have dust to deal with, and we would just swarm it and just work our way through it. That's what humanity would do.
It also, you're almost saying that the sphere network is to protect them from us versus us from something else.
No, I think the sphere network protects the ultra-terrestrials, and we are the third line of defense.
Gotcha. Fascinating, man.
And because there's no other, because we're clearly not created for our intelligence just yet. Because the average intelligence is between 50 to 100. So the only reason why we could be created is for our brawn. It's either one or the other. So I think it's more for our brawn. And you've got to remember, like, going back in history, like, if you look at, like, original, humans in their original form, we were beasts. We were like these huge, very aggressive Neanderthals. We were super strong. We could crush bone with our bare hands. That's how strong we were. We were basically a smart killing machine. And then I think what's happened over time is that that's been tapered down, and now here we are.
Do you think there's these theories about hybridization, where maybe a race is in trouble or can't reproduce, and therefore they're harvesting some of us
Yeah.
genetics anyway to reproduce. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so there's a problem in genetics called synergy, which is not really discussed that much, but it really exists. So what that means is like, like when you have a small village up in the hills somewhere, and they're all having children with each other. And what happens is those children all become very handicapped physically and mentally over time, and eventually they will die. They start dying really young. There was a case in America where you had twins who both had children, who then had children with those children. They all had children with each other, and those kids were absolutely terribly handicapped, and they died young. So the only thing is that we're currently seeing that in small isolated areas because of their demographics, but it's just mathematics. Sooner or later, you're going to have the same problem that will be all over the country, all over the world. So you can't breed your way out of it because the gene pool is too small. So the only way you can sort of improve the situation is by finding another or compatible genetic group and extracting DNA from them to then infuse with your own, and therefore it causes more diversity and then expand the lifespan of the group. So that is why I think other groups are coming to Earth. It's not because they want to be friendly, it's because they want something, and I think it's genetics. Because if you think about it, humanity is quite a young species, and so what would be the prize goal is very clean, low genetic material that is not suffering from high levels of synergy. So a very clean DNA pool. I had a DNA test done a few years ago, and I found I have a 1% similarity with other people. Well, that's synergy, because you're sharing the same DNA with other people. So if I have a child with someone who has the same similarity, the same signature, that will then increase to a higher level, and that will just, generation after generation, that gets higher and higher. But right now we're seeing much higher statistics in like Middle Eastern countries and so forth, because they generally like marrying blood relations. So the thing is when you have another group that is suffering with that effect chronically, their only solution is to find another planet, to find someone like us, and then extract DNA from us to then infuse with their own. And that's really, I think, the key.
Well, I tell you what, last question for you, then I'll have you kind of mentioned some of your material and where people can find it. Last question for you. What do you think the end game is, as far as, you've got the Sphere Network you talked about, both as a defense for the ultra-terrestrials. We've talked about maybe that's their end game, is they want something from us, right? We're resources to some degree. And that's not something new. John Mack, Bud Hopkins, when they really dug into the abduction phenomena, John Mack was a Pulitzer Prize winning Harvard professor that almost lost his job over going down the path of looking into alien abductions. But what he found was somebody in Peru in a jungle that never had a TV would describe the abduction experience, the process, the testing, the order of operations exactly the same as someone from a high-rise in Brooklyn, a lady claiming abduction. So it's not a new theory. But what do you think the end game is? And I'll add this. With a lot of the, whether it's the grifters that we believe are grifters, or whether it's a trusted voice in this field, a lot of them are talking about 2027 as having some kind of big event. And I don't know what the big event is, but it's being alluded that there's either a fake invasion that's being scripted by our government, or a change in humanity. And so that's a big difference, right? That's a big difference. What do you think the end game is if it's ultra-terrestrials and we're being used as resources? how long will this go on, and do you think there's an end game to it?
So if you look at my feed, there's a few videos of what I capture at nighttime where you see what look to be explosions in the night sky. So that would be the Sphere Network taking out these incoming craft. The reason why you're seeing the Sphere Network so low in the sky these days, as in big triangles really low down, low in the sky, is because they're getting closer and closer. So it appears that the line is falling further back towards the Earth. So it wouldn't surprise me if sooner or later one group broke through and did what they wanted to do, which again probably would be extraction of some sort, genetic extraction. So it will probably how it would model out is maybe, in theory, maybe 10-20% of every country in the world will be extracted.
Wow.
But that's just a theory.
Yeah, well, it all is, right? It remains to be seen, but 2027 around there should be an interesting year. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I know we'll be talking in the future. As what's not been said is I know you're working on some things that could really be game-changing when we're talking about spheres. So we'll keep us posted on that. But let people know where they can go and how they can go find your book and watch some of your materials you have there online.
Yeah, it's all on X these days. So it's just look me up. It's Patrick Q. Jackson, Sphere Network, and it's all there. The book is on Amazon. It's got 5 stars. It's nice and cheap. It's like $10. It's nothing special. And everyone who's read it just has like a eye-opening event in their lives. They kind of like they start to see things differently, and I think it's only going to get bigger.
All right. Well, listen, as they say in the UK, cheers. We'll be catching up soon, Patrick. I appreciate your time.